Before we begin, I just have a quick announcement to make. K-Town 4U and I have collaborated for a special event dedicated to you. From August 23 to 30, I will have my own event page that includes great K-pop deals for the artists we love. Other items such as magazines and K-beauty products will be available on the page as well. Register and order from the link in the description to get your hands on these amazing deals and items. Big thanks to K-Town 4U and to each one of you who made this possible. And now for the video. When I first saw that tweet, I was on board with it, until I started thinking it over. Did K-pop comebacks really feel like eras back in the day? I can't say for sure, but after almost 8 years of being a fan, I have to say, not really. But it does exist somehow. There have been a few comebacks that felt like eras, but it's rare, especially recently. Most of these eras are tied to full albums, which is already a rare thing in itself. There are also album series that span multiple releases which do create an era-like feeling, but again, uncommon. Some argue that longer gaps between comebacks help, but I disagree. Even with over a year between their latest comebacks, Fromis 9's Unlock My World didn't feel like a year-long era. Plus, most K-pop EPs and albums often lack the substance to stay relevant for that long. But while comeback eras might not be as common, this isn't anything new. Unlike the Western music industry, where artists take years to release and promote an album, K-pop thrives on quick, frequent releases, and that's fine. Because in my opinion, K-pop actually has its own version of eras. Some span multiple albums, members, years, sometimes even groups. And so for this video, I want to share some of my personal favorites that I've experienced over the years. My name is Winterosi, and here are the best K-pop eras of the past 8 years. Enjoy. The year was 2016, and as a teenager I was looking for something to obsess over. As an Asian kid at that age, it's usually either K-pop or anime. Take a wild guess which one I chose. I had already heard some of the top K-pop songs of that time, and quickly fell in love with the genre. But it wasn't until BTS announced their comeback later that year with a full album that I experienced my first comeback. The first comeback is always something special, you know. It was my first time experiencing something new as a fan, and I was fortunate that it was Wings of all things. The album introduced me to a side of K-pop I didn't know existed. Intricate narratives, a diverse range of genres, striking visuals. These were all elements I grew to appreciate even more over time. Imagine coming for the lighthearted and fun side of K-pop, only to have your first comeback be a dark exploration of self-identity and the struggles of growing up. It sure was unexpected, but definitely a welcome surprise. The way each member had their own track, delving into personal battles, with a video for each one as part of the rollout, was incredibly creative. It really pulled you into the world they built, sparking your imagination and encouraging you to come up with your own theories. And with an album like this, probably started questioning your life decisions as well. They also promoted other songs from the album, which was a bonus. And the cherry on top, they released a repackaged version titled You Never Walk Alone, which expanded on and concluded the themes established in Wings. 5 months is the usual interval between albums, but Wings used that time to tell their own story, while encouraging listeners to reflect on their own experiences. They even had a world tour to accompany it, which just extends it more. No wonder I have such high expectations. I am incredibly lucky to have this era as my first one ever, but little did I know there was more to come. Fast forward a few months and my knowledge grows. I explored new groups and their music, and I can confidently say I was enjoying every moment of my new obsession. Teenage may not be 17's best album, but I'd argue it was an incredible era to experience. Like many K-pop albums, the themes weren't groundbreaking. Life, youth, and coming of age, nothing we haven't seen before. But what made this era memorable for me was how they utilized 4 of their subunits to tell a story in a unique and effective way. The rollout began with 17 leaders and their song Change Up, which discusses their motivations and burning passion for pursuing their dreams. In this song, the leaders serve as spokespersons for the entire group, and as leaders, they are to guide the members through the journey. Next was Trauma, performed by the hip-hop team. This song explores personal struggles, insecurities, and emotional scars that the members have faced. Storytelling has been a fundamental aspect of hip-hop, especially when it comes to expressing one's struggles and perspectives on personal and at times societal issues. Then came the 13th Month's Dance, a song that can be a bit confusing to grasp. The title doesn't clarify much, but from what I've read and seen, the song is better understood through its performance. While I wouldn't call myself a professional dancer, I noticed that the choreography leans more toward contemporary than typical K-pop dance. When paired with the song, the overall emotion seems to convey a sense of freedom that comes from being isolated. This contrasts with the vocal unit's song Pinwheel, which expresses feelings of longing and the sensation of being lost in time while waiting for someone. This album tells the story of both the beauty and concerns of growing up. 17 consistently delivers powerful messages, and I believe they executed this teenage era flawlessly. However, it's not always the deep messages and overarching themes that define an era. Sometimes, perfect conceptualization and execution can take you a long way, and I have one album in mind. Even with their already perfect discography, Red Velvet and their creatives managed to produce better works and built one of the greatest albums ever made. Perfect Velvet was promoted like most albums, but I always find myself returning to these teaser visualizers. While song snippets are typically shared through highlight medleys, I believe each song deserves its own spotlight. Especially with music this good, they had to flex each song one by one. For 10 straight days, I was on edge, eagerly waiting each night to hear the new teaser. You don't quite understand. I had Kingdom Come for Monday, I Just for Tuesday, Perfect 10 for Wednesday, and it just kept going. And the best part? The album ended up sounding even better. You can do this kind of rollout with any album, but not all albums deliver on their promises. Sometimes the final product is disappointing, and at that point, just kill me. Not Perfect Velvet, though. From the announcement to the teasers, photos, and release, the mood was perfectly established. The expectations were already high, but they just had to deliver. And to exceed it is a satisfaction you don't usually get. For the next year, let's explore something a bit different. 2018 K-pop was filled with significant events, and many fans, myself included, label it as one of the best years in K-pop, and I believe these next two examples truly made the year extra special. This was the first time we saw NCT come together for a full album, and it was nothing short of amazing. I know K-pop fans say this a lot, but this truly was a "you just had to be there" moment, because this wasn't anything you usually see in K-pop. With all the songs dropping and members being revealed, they just kept growing from there. Songs like Boss, Baby Don't Stop, Touch, and others truly showcased what this group offers. Seeing that black-on-black performance for the first time was a cultural experience I'll never forget, and that's coming from someone who doesn't stan this group. But that wasn't my favorite Avengers Assemble moment of the year. This next one, for sure, changed the trajectory of my life forever.
Hello, welcome. I wanna try some right now. Hey, let's get it.
Of course, I had to make it about Luna. From the fantastic year of 2016 to the even greater year of 2018, all 12 Luna members and 3 subunits were revealed every month. The genius here isn't just the concept of debuting the girls one by one. If you think about it, that's the most inefficient way to debut a group. But what made this pre-debut era truly an experience instead of a tedious wait was the world building. I'll admit I wasn't there from the very beginning, but I don't think it diminished the experience at all, just because of the sheer amount of content available. Even if it were the year 2127, as long as I see the thumbnail of that blonde girl named Kim Lip, I'd start asking questions like, who is Luna, and why are there 12 of these girls? And just like that, I'm hooked. It's timeless. If you watch from the very beginning until the moment they come together, you'll experience the K-pop equivalent of the MCU. This pre-debut era genuinely opened my eyes and demonstrated that there are no boundaries to creativity. 3 years is a long time, and is the longest way to market a group. But honestly, if you have the resources and the guts, why not go for it? I can't believe I'm unironically saying this, but the journey was the best part. Even though LOONA didn't end up becoming the biggest K-pop group ever, what they accomplished will always be regarded as one of K-pop's greatest achievements. The following year was a bit tamer, but it still had its fair share of memorable eras. There was a time when everyone loved ITZY, and during that period, they were untouchable. Even as someone who has never quite connected with them, I can confidently say they had a phenomenal run that isn't easily replicable. I don't know how, but JYP crafted the perfect debut year any rookie group and company can only hope for. Their first song not only became their first hit, but also the biggest hit of the year. Entering the industry like that is impressive, as it's difficult to build upon. But they pulled it off. The easiest approach was to have something familiar yet different, which led us to Icy. And to wrap up the trilogy, they needed the best of all, a grand finale as I'd call it. Compare it to most mediocre trilogies, it really gets you thinking how hard it is to pull off something like this. It fits ITZY's concept too. If they were to present themselves as this rebellious group, might as well start with a bang, right? This approach propelled ITZY to become one of the leading groups in the industry. ITZY is definitely a name that will be remembered in the K-pop history books. But that wasn't my favorite trilogy of the year. ITZY's trilogy lasted a little longer than the year, so if I had to choose who truly stood out in 2019, it would be Red Velvet and their legendary trilogy, Rave Festival. Unlike other trilogies, this one was a bit unusual, and let me explain why. I never associated this album with having strong narratives or anything like that. There may be underlying themes, but not as intricate as how some groups do it. Red Velvet has always taken pride in being a group that simply does what they do. They don't follow current trends or rehash old sounds. It's all about pure creative freedom. No one in their right mind would put Zimzalabim and Psycho in the same series, but they did, and thank goodness for that. This is a true showcase of range you don't often hear in K-pop, that only Red Velvet is willing to explore. The album feels like a festival. Rides, food, mascots, toys, all combined into one experience. That's how it felt for me in 2019. I felt like I was waiting for a new ride every few weeks, and it brought me so much joy. That, or maybe it was just their most active year as a group. Either way, I am thankful to have been there. Other examples I'd like to mention are ATEEZ's Treasure series and G-Friend's Box trilogy. ATEEZ's approach was similar to ITZY's in that they quickly established the type of group they would be, leaving a strong impression on everyone. G-Friend's trilogy, on the other hand, marked the beginning of something new. They were always a solid group, but they played it a bit safe and risked being left behind by their peers. However, in 2020, they found their footing and delivered something fresh. It was a bit risky, but personally, I thought these 3 releases were some of their best work, so I'd say it was worth it. Kind of.
Drop it. I just want a little bit of peace. Peace and love. Peace and love.
We've talked about eras that span multiple albums, releases, and members, but nothing quite compares to this next one. This is an era I'm sure many of us experienced, so I know most of you will understand me. I've always believed that girl groups are the overall frontrunners of the industry, but in 2022, it felt even more apparent. In just 1 year, from legends to rookies, we saw all these amazing girl groups releasing music, making it a truly exciting time to be a fan. But I want to focus on these 3 groups that took the girl group scene to the next level that year. With just 3 singles in less than a year, I've quickly made a name for themselves. This group reminded us of how simple K-pop can be. Because more than anything, K-pop needs good music, and they've consistently delivered that. I'd love to discuss IVE even more, but we all know this video would be 10 times longer. The second girl group that shook the scene was none other than Les Seraphim. Nowadays, speaking positively about this group feels almost like a crime. But back then, everyone had nothing but praise for them. Especially with their first 2 releases, it seemed like K-pop had crafted the perfect group. To me, these two albums sounded like polished jewelry. While I don't think they're the best, they were perfect in their own ways, the perfect blend of mainstream pop and ambition. Then there's New Jeans, who completely destroyed the scene. This group made me wonder, why can't all groups be this well thought out? From conceptualization to the final product, they felt like they genuinely had something to offer. While some of you are still unable to accept it, their debut truly shifted something. Others have tried to replicate it, but most companies have failed. They think that putting girls in jeans is the answer, but it isn't. They thought it was about UK garage, but it wasn't either. It's about dedication and the willingness to take something simple and make it extraordinary. In other groups' defense, that's much easier said than done. That's why these three groups set themselves apart. Even though public reception for them has shifted somewhat since then, it doesn't change the fact that, even for a moment, they were at the top.
여기 봐봐. 야, 왜 찍어?
Slipping every moment, can never get enough. Never-ending circles, can't get you on my mind.
I don't talk about Triple S as much as I should, especially since I believe they're one of the most ambitious groups out right now. The group was formed gradually by revealing one member at a time across multiple releases, culminating in their own Avengers Assemble moment. They have dedicated and flexible subunits that showcase a wider variety of styles, along with an overarching lore and specific narratives for each unit. Their themes explore topics like self-esteem, dreams, first love, to even less common ideas like the necessity of challenging the status quo for growth. For a group this ambitious, you need more than just a typical debut to win people over. That's why it took them 2 years to establish themselves as a group that can be taken seriously, and I loved every single second of it. My 2023 wouldn't be complete without their existence. During this debut era, they released one of my favorite albums in K-pop, along with some of my favorite songs and videos, capturing all the wonderful aspects I love so much about K-pop. The idol of all possibilities is a name that carries significant weight. There's a big promise here, which is why I wouldn't want anything less from them. For some, this group might feel a bit over the top and could turn them off. That is the biggest hurdle they need to overcome, and that's no easy task. This group is set up to fail as much as they are to succeed, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. But after living through that extensive debut run before we finally got to the final 24, I think it's safe to say they're on the right track. If there's a possibility of having a 24-membered girl group with a mildly confusing concept be the best in the industry, why not? With the debut era over, I am simply too excited to see what comes after. In conclusion, while K-pop may not have album-dedicated eras, we have our version of them. Some are based on releases, some by year, and others by artists, but the essence of an era is present. But I think a takeaway here is that most of these eras are formed and remembered by personal experience. Many of you might not relate to everything I've mentioned, and I know you each have your own stories to share. Unironically speaking, maybe K-pop eras were the friends we made along the way. Depending on the circumstances, the feeling can be better or worse for any of us. So the next time the stars align, feel free to enjoy it. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too.